Oh, hello. Something people have been saying since March is that COVID doesn't discriminate. People all over the world are getting COVID. Celebrities aren't immune. Even the President of the United States isn't immune. So if COVID doesn't care about what kind of person you are or the life that you lead, why is it that some groups are hit way harder than others? If we're all equally immune, why are some people more safe? Today we're going to examine how race plays a role in where this virus spreads, look back on history to better understand where healthcare disparities come from, and think about how we as individuals can do things to help. Today, we answer the question, is COVID really colorblind? Part 1, the facts. Before we take a look at the nitty-gritty sociological stuff, we need to look at the stats and facts. Full disclosure, it's not that fun. But then again, what is fun about the intersection between race and viral diseases? Not much. So let's just look at some data tables. Let's look at the COVID-19 cases, hospitalization, and death by race and ethnicity. Indigenous and Latinx Americans have the highest chance of getting COVID at 2.8 times higher than white people. Black and African Americans come in a close second with their chances being at 2.6 times higher. And this is a whole separate conversation, but you can see that Asian Americans are actually getting COVID at a rate almost identical to white people. And yet still, some Americans are continuing to call COVID-19 by a few particular nicknames.
Chinese virus, Kung flu, caught the Chinese flu, China.
Anyways, when we look at the data at a state level, we continue to see similar trends. Let's take a look at the cases and deaths by race and ethnicity in California. The Latinx community makes up 60.3% of cases, despite being only 38.9% of California's population. 36.6% of California's population is white, and yet white people only account for 18.1% of cases. These numbers are shocking for a disease that shouldn't be affected by race. This has nothing to do with the nature of any ethnic group, and everything to do with their conditions in the United States. These systemic racial disparities didn't just appear. The reason why Black people and Latinx people are more vulnerable to COVID-19 can be traced back to the beginning of American history. Part 2, the background. Okay, so our conditions are what determine how likely we'll be to catch COVID-19. What are the kinds of conditions then that make a person more vulnerable than someone else? The answer is pretty clear. It's poor people. Poor people are more likely to get COVID-19. Individuals with less wealth are more likely to work the occupations that expose them to COVID-19 more than other jobs, and they have less access to healthcare and the resources they need to keep them safe. Therefore, poor people are just more likely to get COVID than rich people, and since Black and brown people in the US have less money, they are the group most likely to get COVID-19. Okay, now it's time to ask the hard-hitting questions. Why do POC suffer more from poverty than white people? Let's first look at Black people and African Americans. White people have an advantage that Black people don't have. No thanks to the slave trade, they've been given a 400-year head start to accumulate wealth in this country that Black people never had. Black people weren't seen as anything more than property until the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. And even after being granted their freedom, we still saw Black people being held back tremendously from being able to accumulate their own wealth. We got the KKK, we have legal discrimination, we have social marginalization, we have voter suppression, lynchings, all while white people kept getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. All of a sudden, white people had this economic security that was being passed down from generation to generation. Even after the Civil Rights Act was passed, which outlawed any discrimination in the workplace and in law, Black people were still twice as likely to live in poverty than white people. There simply hadn't been enough time for Black people to have equal access to good healthcare, good education, and well-paid jobs. All of those factors are why Black people are getting COVID at such high rates. Now let's give some background to the class conditions of Latinx people in California. Manufacturing jobs such as farm workers and factory workers quickly became some of the most vulnerable professions. And according to the 2018 National Agricultural Workers Survey, 83% of farm workers are Hispanic. Manufacturing is one of the least regulated industries. And the reason why it's so especially dangerous during COVID times is because the configurations that these workers are put into makes it almost impossible for them to socially distance. Most of the factory farms in California have their workers working insanely long hours, and all of them have to share one bathroom and one drinking fountain. And these people, they can't stay 6 feet apart because they have to work side by side cutting the produce. And the saddest part is, even when employees test positive, it's rare that they get to stay home. These people are terrified of losing their jobs because they can't afford to lose the already incredibly low wages that they work for to support their families. And when they do go into work, these companies are not transparent to their employees about COVID outbreaks. So these people just live in constant fear. And these factory farms get away easy over and over again because they largely employ immigrants. Some of these people are undocumented, and some of them don't even speak English. Those people can't speak up for themselves. And for the ones who can speak up, they don't, because they're terrified of losing these jobs because they know their lives depend on it. It's a kind of slavery that we've been tricked into believing isn't slavery, but it is. This country allows immigrants to be tethered to jobs that are essentially killing them. And don't think that these numbers are unique to COVID-19. When you take a look back to the height of the AIDS and HIV epidemic in the 1990s, Black and brown people were still largely affected by it more than white people. Even after a vaccine comes out, it's unlikely that we'll see the numbers of Black and brown cases leveling out with white people. In a recent survey, half of Black adults said that they wouldn't trust a COVID vaccine that came out, even if it was backed by scientists. And honestly, I don't know if I can blame them. The American healthcare system has been failing people of color for years. The 1930s Tuskegee experiment was done to learn about the development of syphilis, and it was tested on 600 Black men. 390 of them had syphilis, and the rest of them didn't. Now, most of these men were sharecroppers. A lot of them had never even seen a doctor before. So, these men were incentivized to join the experiment with the promise of free healthcare. In truth, they didn't receive any proper treatment to cure their illness. These researchers just wanted to see how syphilis developed and didn't actually care about their well-being at all. So they gave them placebos, even though at the time people knew that penicillin was the treatment for syphilis. As a result, innocent men died. They went blind, they went insane, and they had other severe health problems as a result of untreated syphilis. You know, now we have transparency laws and consent laws, but the pain didn't just go away. The scars of the Tuskegee experiment still run deep in the Black community. And it takes time and legislation and political advocacy for that pain to go away. Part 3, conclusion. Oh my God, that got really dark really fast. Listen, I know that facing the racism in this country can be really draining and can leave you feeling hopeless, but it's important that you don't give up. There are little things that we can do as individuals to start moving this country in a positive direction. The first, of course, is just having these conversations. Race and COVID-19, it's a hard pill to swallow, so just talking about it actually does a lot of good. Show people the facts. Give them the numbers. If people start facing the facts head on, it gets harder and harder for them to be ignored. And to help Latinx people on farms and factories, donate some of your time and money to organizations that help immigrants. And the last thing I'll mention is arguably the most important. Guys, listen to the CDC. Social distance. Don't gather in large groups, and if you have to, for the love of God, please be outside. Listen, I know it's a cliche, but we're all in this together, all right? And if you want to be a good ally to the Black and brown communities in this country, put on a f***ing mask. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it, and now I'm gonna put a mask on and I'm gonna leave. Goodbye.